starting again.
Still happening.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Oh, let me take off. Okay, hello, everyone. I see we have a lot of people, or not a lot, but we have some people on Instagram. Hi. Hi to all of you on Zoom. This is Scuppernong Books from Greensboro, North Carolina. This is a first for us, a hybrid event. It's the first time we've had people in the store since the COVID descended upon the land, and we're experimenting with small live events, which we will also live stream to see if we can do it so we can invite more writers into the wonderful world of having a public audience. So thank you for joining us during this experimental event, Writers Read, where we will we will listen to women, 5 women here in the Greensboro area writing or working on works in progress. I don't have my cue card, so I'm a little rusty, guys. It's been a long time since I've done this. I've been Zooming for months. My name is Deonna Kelli Saeed. I'm a writer here in Greensboro. I work for the North Carolina Writers Network, and I'm also the PEN America North Carolina Piedmont representative. I'm very happy to be reading tonight, but I'm also really happy to be in the company of some amazing women who are going to share their work in progress. We're at a moment in America's history where writers and cultural creators matter more than ever. So, before I introduce the first speaker, I also want to encourage everyone to be sure to support your independent bookstore. Even if they can't allow for large live events, please make sure that you do support independent bookstores, because independent bookstores really matter. I want to introduce our first reader for the evening. Elizabeth Illig is a writer and career coach who focuses on young adult fantasy novels, career and personal guidance, and book reviews. She's currently pitching her first YA fantasy novel while working on her second. She dreams of seeing her name in a local bookstore like Scuppernong Books, and you can learn more about her at writetowonder.com. So for those who are here, let's give her a very warm.
Thank you, Deonna. I'm excited to be here. So let me just slip this over here and then we'll get started. So I'm going to read from one of my works in progress. This is a novel that I've been working on, and before I dive into a brief excerpt from the first chapter, I wanted to provide a short summary. So after a lonely assassin trained to kill magical storytellers accidentally reveals her own storytelling abilities, she flees to an enemy nation where she learns that the powerful brother she believed was dead is very much alive. But when her assassin leader shows up demanding their heads, she must accept the abilities she has been trained to fear to save her brother and herself before they become the ultimate prize. Chapter 1. Questa hated it here. The whole place reminded her of her parents. The vendors selling rats passing as chicken, the smell of onions and last night's overindulgences, the sound of well-timed punches and ill-fated men. Everything Questa tried to forget. But despite who she was, who she had become, she never seemed to escape the scourge. She and Wren leaned against the shadow speakeasy, waiting on the Storian they tracked. Grimy taverns, hobbled houses, and sagging bars hugged the streets, sheltering a market between them. Fog drifted in the morning air, mixing the leaden scent of steel with the salty tang of fish. Market-goers asked about prices, while boats discussed travel, their horns bartering passage to and from port. Any other day in Manon, except Questa couldn't stop fidgeting. Something wasn't right about this mission. Questa could feel it. Tapping her fingers against her thigh, she surveyed the sailors, shoppers, and sellers, searching for a woman with dark hair and pale skin. She shivered, pulling her jacket tighter, ready for this mission to end safely, ready to protect Wren. He eyed the vendors, his brown eyes calculating. Questa couldn't clamp down her restlessness. Something definitely wasn't right. She always saw the signs, the slight misplacement of a flourish or the smallest tilt of a script, a forgery, a fraud, and the Storian Abrege proved no exception, evading capture 3 times in as many days. Who was this woman, and why has she proved so difficult to catch? Above the shuffling feet and haggling voices, wanted posters plastered the taverns, some faces young, some old, some fearful, some defiant. Every color, every age, every type of story and magic. But among the yearbook, Abrege stood out as the picture with the highest price. Each of Questa's senses heightened as she spotted the Storian and poised her body for a chase. before realizing it was someone else. She slunk her shoulders. Any Vins talented enough chased Abergé, which explained why Questa and Wren loomed in the shadowed alley, why they stood in this festering place on split stones below cracked windows. Not that Questa believed herself above the scourge. No, it was the thought of returning here, of being imprisoned by nights underneath doorsteps, hunger pains, and constant calculation that scared her. Not to mention Wren. 11 days. Questa bit her lip. She could keep their secrets for 11 more days. For Wren's sake. He deserved his freedom. Wren checked his watch, then smiled at her, all taunting bets and casual grace. As usual, he looked handsome, his brown skin and dark hair peeking out from underneath the black and gold uniform, his waist strapped with guns and knives, but Questa knew better than to dwell on it. Never mind that the more she saw his sharp mind work, the more appealing he became. Never mind the kiss they shared 6 months ago, a one-time reckless thing. None of it mattered now. She was a danger to him in more ways than one. The memory she stored a threat to his discharge. 11 days, and he would be free. Tugging at her coat to shelter her skin and calm her nerves, Questa chided herself in impatience. She and Wren had no future together, and there was no use thinking about it. She smoothed a wrinkle on her sleeve, her own uniform mirroring Wren's, but while he radiated relaxed charm and disheveled tidiness, she simply appeared severe. She almost didn't recognize the woman she had become. Brown hair, pale complexion, blue eyes, and black uniform. The girl from the scourge, transformed into a menacing, lethal Vins. Bet you 5 notes she doesn't show, Wren said, offering a seductive grin that whispered of dark rooms and little clothing. She's always one step ahead. Questa kept her voice even, though Wren's brown eyes and thick lashes distracted her. She's a Futurian. She knows what we'll do before we even know ourselves. That wasn't entirely true, at least for Wren, but secrets like that went unspoken in Manon. She'll show, Questa said, accepting the wager. It's her only option. A top hat strolled through the market, toting a man in a tweed suit underneath it, his nice shoes and expensive clothes another type of forgery. Questa cursed as Wren followed her gaze. Alvaro. They both watched while he picked up a gilded trinket of the directorate, negotiated the price, and slipped the object in his pocket. An odd purchase for a man opposed to the Vins, but perhaps the item served as a ruse. Whatever he planned, Questa's stomach gnawed in unease. She fingered the chain around her neck. I wouldn't worry about it, Wren said. Odds are against him coming after you again. We captured 3 of his keepers last week. Keepers of the truth. Another threat to the Manon way of life. Questa scowled in his direction. Like a painted masterpiece, he envisioned the scene, a memory from last year. His keepers dragging her underground, placing a bag over her head, and locking her in one of the rooms built into the tunnels. They hadn't tried to ship her away, but they might as well have, given how Director Zuria reacted, all cracked whips, dunked heads, and chained appendages. Questa looked like a historian, like a person with abilities. It took 7 days of torture to convince the director otherwise. Questa thought the keepers wanted to send her to safety, revealing memories of her parents painted in grotesque lies, that her parents had been keepers too. Not only that, but her parents had been historians. Ridiculous. Her parents had been poor vendors in the scourge, eager to get rid of a liability, eager to get rid of her. Even stranger, the keepers mentioned her brother, a brother who had been the finest Vins in Manon, a brother who had been sent to kill a foreign merchant 3 years ago, a brother who had long been dead. Questa shuddered. She no longer wished to observe such a gruesome picture, so she stored the memory in the back warehouses of her mind, along with her collection. Just as her pulse began to ease, Alvaro tipped his hat her way before slinking into the crowd. He hadn't forgotten. Well, neither had Questa. Her hand itched to clasp her necklace, a trinket in the shape of Manon, but she clamped her fist to prevent the urge. Wren scrunched his forehead. He had found her with the keepers, and in a twisted way, Questa was grateful the whole thing had happened. Otherwise, she might not have known him. The Vins, a large network of trained assassins. But Wren's worry grew mischievous as his vision focused on something behind her. Looks like I owe you 5 notes, he said.
Yay! Yeah, Instagram is still going. So Anna, if I don't pronounce your name right, I want you to yell it. Daignault. All right. Anna Luisa Daignault. Is that right?
Daignault.
Yes. Holds a Master of Science from University of Montreal in Linguistics Anthropology. and works for Living Tongues Institute. And it is also Quilla, a songwriter, producer, performer known for her ethereal vocals and live electronic sets. Originally from Montreal, Canada, she currently resides in Greensboro, and you can learn more about her brand new album at quillamusic.com. That's Quilla music.com. So here she is. Round of applause.
Thank you so much. We're broadcasting from Scuppernong Books, which is one of the awesome independent local bookstores in Greensboro, North Carolina. They do limited opening for people, so if you are downtown, everyone needs books during COVID. You need lots and lots and lots of books. So this is the place where you need to come, Scuppernong Books in downtown Greensboro. And thank you, Deonna, for having me at this event. By trade, I'm a musician. I've been writing for a long time, so this is a nice chance to share some writing, so I appreciate you having me among these esteemed writers, so thank you. This is a book that I started writing during COVID. It's called Groundlings, The Archivist of Gleaves, and it's a concept of far into the future where humans have become really small, about 3 feet tall, and we can only come out in the daylight, and the rest of, well, certain portions of the daylight, and the rest of the time is dominated by these giant roaches who have taken over the earth. So that's the concept, and our protagonists go out and find cool items during the day, and Chapter 1 kind of explains a little bit of that. So that's the context. Chapter 1. It was a clear, hot day. The hills stretched out under the late afternoon sun, their texture green and craggy. The ostrich ran down the dirt road, her large feet kicking up dust. Her large, sharp eyes scanned the horizon beneath her generous eyelashes. Her carrying pack was strapped to her chest with zigzag leather straps, emblazoned with the emblem of Gleaves. The ostrich careened through the landscape, enjoying the warm breeze on her body. Her speed was magnificent to behold. She opened her wings slightly, her long feathers rustling around her, as she turned onto the town's main road and headed towards the large buildings in the town center. She passed dilapidated homes and burned out shops. She slowed down to a lilting jog as she passed old toppled monuments and the once glorious fountain in the center of town. She came to a full stop in front of an abandoned cathedral and gazed up at its towers and crumbling stone walls. The ostrich croaked quietly into her mouthpiece. All clear at the old church. Nice work, McNamara, said Grin softly, his voice coming through the talkie, strapped to the ostrich's chest. McNamara the ostrich replied into her mouthpiece, I'm going in. The church doors had long been removed, and the entrance to the cathedral lay open like a mouth missing its front teeth. The ostrich steadied herself and walked into the structure, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. Beams of color came through the dirty, jagged stained glass windows and stamped broken patterns onto the once grand stone floors. The debris from pews and discarded religious objects were strewn about. McNamara ruffled her plumage and looked around for a moment. This place used to be so lovely. Too bad it's all gone to yuck. Eye on the prize, Mac. Eye on the prize. We've got less than an hour until the onset of dusk, whispered Grin through the talkie. No time to waste on pleasantries. Henceforth, said the ostrich, holding her long neck, regal and tall, the relic will be ours, by Gleaves. No roachet will claim it. She took careful steps down the aisle, or what was left of it. The columns rose around her like craggy giants, pockmarked by war and disrepair. Time had not been kind to this place of worship, but some of its former beauty still shone through. With its spine-like shapes, the vaulted ceiling far above her reminded her of a spiderweb. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a scuffle high in the vault. The ostrich froze. "Trouble!" she breathed into her mouthpiece. She waited a moment. The muscles in her powerful legs tightened as she steeled herself. "It's now or never!" McNamara leaped into action, taking long strides towards the altar. She bounded up the stairs and landed on the platform gracefully. She swept the place with her gaze, looking at all the rubble scattered on the altar. "It's not here!" she cried. Grin gave her instructions through the talkie. "Look around. It's an old metal box." Mac twisted her neck around and saw an old lectern lying on the ground in the corner. With one bound, she reached it and kicked it over. She saw a metal lockbox laying on the dusty ground beneath it. "I've got it!" She was just about to grab the lockbox with her beak when suddenly a roachlet the size of a big dog appeared on the wall above her. In a flash, it scampered down and propelled itself off the wall onto the ostrich, its signature high-pitched screeches filling the air. "Roachlet!" she cried. Mac shook her plumage violently, but the insect held on, its spindly arms clinging to her feathers, its wings buzzing with fury. Mac's heart pounded as she thrashed to and fro, and Grin yelled through the talkie, "Use your daylight beam!" Mac bent her head down and used her beak to turn on her Gleaves emblem. A powerful light glowed out of it through a golden beam. With the roachlet still on her back, she dug her feet into the splintered wood floor and started running towards the edge of the altar. "Kikariki-floo!" Her war cry resonated with remarkable power thanks to the acoustics of the old church. She launched herself off the broken stairs, curled her body, and she went airborne and executed what can only be described as an ostrich front flip through the air. The roachlet could not hold on any longer. It let go and landed on the floor onto its back, its legs scrambling frantically. Mac turned her daylight beam onto him. Unable to bear the concentrated light, the roach jumped up and scurried away into the darkness of the pews. Mac clucked with pride. She ran back to the altar and retrieved the lockbox, strapping it safely to her leather carrying pack. She quickly bounded down the main aisle and out the gaping cathedral door. "I'm good to go. Meet me in the Yade," she said hurriedly into her mouthpiece. As she raced down the old dirt road, her head held high, she raised her regal wings into a victory stance. For a brief moment, the world was her oyster, and she felt a rare surge of glee. She reached the large grassy expanse they called the Yade within a few minutes. "Quickly, get on my back," said Mac. Grin emerged from his hiding spot under a pile of grass clippings. "You did it," he smiled, shaking the grass off himself, then climbing quickly onto the ostrich's back. They wasted no time and took off across the Yade, the sun slowly descending on the horizon. As they glided through the landscape, a happy ancient tune could be heard coming from the ostrich and her rider. "Fiddly-foo, fiddly-fee, let's get back to glorious Gleaves. Fiddly-foo, fiddly-fee, let's get back to glorious Gleaves." Thank you.
So if I reach for my phone, that doesn't mean that your time is up. Right. Now I'm pleased to welcome someone who's very familiar to this particular stage here at Scuppernong Books. Ashely Lumpkin is a Georgia-raised Carolina-based writer, editor, actor, and educator. She is the author of 5 poetry collections. As a lover of performance as well as the written word, she has been a competing member of the Bull City Slam team since 2015 and currently serves as its assistant coach. Before the time of COVID, she co-curated the series First Draft here at Scuppernong Books, a reading of new works and works in progress. She currently serves as a member at large on the board of the North Carolina Poetry Society, and you can learn more about her at lumplestillskins.com, which is the greatest personal website name ever. So let's give a huge welcome to Ashely Lumpkin.
Thank you so much, Deonna, for that welcome and for having me. I am going to read a short piece of fiction and then a couple poems and then get out of your way. This first piece stemmed from a prompt that was kind of a joke, but I quickly fell in love with the neighborhood that it describes, and so we'll see what happens with it as I continue working on it. On the corner of Elm and Church is a shop that sells artisanal milk. Each carton is labeled with the location of the dairy farm and the diet of each of its cows. Marcos, the boy with the bun and tortoiseshell frames, prefers foxtail and lavender from Reedsville in North Carolina, and I am not certain if I can taste the difference. For almost $10 a carton, you have to at least pretend that it's crisper than anything you'd get at a Whole Foods, which is 2 blocks east and just opened. It used to be a record store, the milk shop, not the Whole Foods, which Marcos likes to mention when we pass the posters of Hendrix that hang above the sheep's milk. Marcos has lived here for almost 3 years. He says it calmly, like the Kims that owned the place just sold it and moved on to better things. Like just last week, we could have been discussing album covers instead of the horrors of cattle raised on Kentucky bluegrass, but this place didn't just used to be a record store. I mean, it was, at one point, decades ago, when you could sell vinyl unironically in this part of the city. And after that, a thrift store, and after that, it had been nothing for years. I guess it would always be the place where Mrs. Kim shot Tony the night he and his friends tried to steal Bird and a few bucks, but I was 3 years old then, and my parents said it barely made the news. It did make the news, maybe 12 years later, when Mrs. Kim's son shot Alex. It was bad enough for business to be a family of folks with a body count, but now policemen were fresh in the spotlight. Folks blaming racism in public again. So the record store closed in '91, and the wing spot next door for different reasons. And then the gas station at the end of the block got vandalized 3 times, and pretty soon the whole side of town had the kind of reputation police stopped answering their 911 calls for, but Marcos doesn't know any of that. Marcos loves that on a Saturday you can come to Spilled at noon and hear owners pair milks with different coffees, which you can sample from a bright red Demitas, and someone from the coffee shop up the block is on hand to sell a half-pound bag of beans marked down if you buy the milk. Once, I got the blended fescue and Timothy to pair with the dark roast from the south of Peru, and Marcos asked me on a date. He's the kind of guy that takes his dates out on the subway to people watch and discuss theories of public transportation until they almost forget, until just after sunset, that it was just a cheap date in a subway. But we don't start with that. He takes me to the Barnes & Noble near Whole Foods to sip coffee and not buy books. I am currently working on, thank you. I'm currently working on a series of poems that looks at love through different types of words. So the title of each poem is just the name of that type of word, which I sort of offer without definition. Contronym. When I say left, I mean the house was empty, a note affixed to the bedroom door. Or, I mean my bags were packed, feet ready to run. I mean, at one point we were a fine couple, fine as in brilliant, or as in ordinary, 2 apologists, one of us weeping, the other taking a firm stand. The heart is the truest contronym, both material and its opposite. I love you, I am on the way home now. I love you, I am letting you go. This one is a glossonym. Here, come lay beside me. I built a temple to all of your worthy, laid an offering on the altar and called you by your good name. There is nothing left to do but open myself in prayer, take you by the hand, bow my head, and amen. Amen. Yes. And the last of the 3 of those that I'm going to read is called Plesionym. So it's kind of like going to the grocery store and they don't have your favorite chips. He says to the boy, his heart fresh broken, eager for any advice. You get the store brand chips, which are basically the same. And you're full, so that's enough in the meanwhile. Great advice that I actually heard in the hallways of my school. And this last poem is not from that series, but it is one of my, the cars passing by sounding like theme music. This last poem is not from that series, but is one of the newer works that I've been working on. And it is titled, Cantor Reads a Suicide Note on a Tuesday After School in the Rain. And it goes like this. There is a difference between the countably infinite and that which is uncountable. The rain that falls to water the earth and the vapor it distills to. My students say the thing about always adding one. I ask if there is nothing smaller worthy of addition. There is an infinite number of numbers between 0 and 1. Some of them we have names for, others are just a thought. I am alive today because an old friend thought of me once. Reminded me of promises made a third of our lives ago. She asks me to name one thing I am willing to stick around for, then watches me distill that thing down to its vapor. My brother becomes his laughter, becomes the air between his teeth. There is a countable number of atoms there, but no way for me to count them. She asks if I will keep breathing to honor molecules too small to see. A student trips in the hallway and another says, "Go kill yourself." Everyone around the two of them laughs, even the one who's the butt of the joke. I hear the laughter fall to the ground and the sadness it distills to. There is a countable number of suicide attempts of high school students each year, an uncountable number of times they've smiled while sharpening the blade. I am alive today because a teacher saw an off-kilter grin once, asked me to dream of a future with too many joys to count. My student who slipped me a suicide note the third day of his sophomore year walks across the graduation stage, and I know that dream is here. Depression is a countable weight, but the days feel so uncountable. An uncountable number of moments between one day and the next. I am alive today because no one has yet decided to kill me. There is a countable number of reasons I will not let it be by my own hand. I am alive today because I decided to get out of bed once, decided to eat, decided to shower, decided to live up to my own good name. There are days I am drowned in sorrow and all the guilt that it distills to. There are days I can't see the difference between the rain and all this vapor. There is an infinite number of atoms comprising every flood, but I am built to withstand the water. You can count on it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next, I am pleased to welcome Ilari Pass, originally from Maplewood, New Jersey. She is a retired maintenance worker of the U.S. Postal Service. Yeah. She holds an MA in English with a concentration in literature from Gardner-Webb University. Her work are as forthcoming in Red Fez, Unlikely Stories, Triggerfish Critical Review, Rigorous Machine, the American Journal of Poetry, Drunk Monkeys, Broad River Review, Common Grounds Review, and others. She is she is a writer putting the work in. So I am really excited to have her read tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scuppernong Books, Deonna, for having me. It's such a crucial time we're living, and we need to be heard, literally. I have one flash fiction and a couple of short poems. I guess I'll start with the flash fiction. I titled it, What's Up with That Roar in You? This was an inspiration from an interview I was reading by an English poet, Roger Robinson, and he was talking about how Black voices are literally invisible in a literary world. So this is kind of like a tribute to him. What's up with that roar in you? Enter the mosquito. It's almost midnight. Their bodies felt him before their eyes saw him. Nervous whinnying of the horses has begun, and they're ready to bolt. They've been shifting their weight from foot to foot ever since they felt first tremors, and the sight of this creature looks to be pushing them over the edge from nervous to outright fear. Every monstrous step shakes the ground like an earthquake. Look, the horses are running. Look at the horses run, bystanders shout. It's easy for me to just take off and head towards the direction from where the horses are running, wondering what's over there. Is it a beast? I'm used to seeing horses. Running is no longer the draw for me. I have landed in the dark. Comfortably invisible, perched atop the bumpy charcoal gray scaled dorsal ridge of its body. This invisibility is the death I die every day that comes from a devaluation of the other, which comes from a lack of empathy. But the initial incision should be sharp, precise. Don't hesitate. This will be the toughest part. Do you know how hard it is to end a thing? It'll take some nerve. What I mean is, it'll hurt, but I can't get what I can crave for if I want it badly enough. The mosquito confronts Godzilla. Go for the head. Oops. A thought came to my mind. What are you afraid of? Him, bystanders answer before I even realize I've spoken it aloud. Shaking my head. No, Godzilla. If I can find out his fear, I can use it against him. Your indifference towards my people is my strength. I must show you how invisible you are to me because you are used to it. It is a power that I have shaped into. It's some kind of life, like being inside a fun house with mirrors all around. You must see your loathing reflected in all shapes and sizes. Your head is in the way of directly seeing the image in the mirror behind you. Line after line of whitecaps charge towards the shore. Pools of water everywhere, wet dead leaves, cement shells and debris. It's raining hard, worth something to change your landscape. I'm inviting you quietly, but I must warn you. I've been through this before, but hope you won't be convinced. The mosquito targets the belly. The wind is swelling as Godzilla turns, standing tall between the sun and the clouds. It's like fighting a dragon, isn't it? I've done that. Below its rubbery hide is the hatred I've been craving. Abhorrence alone holds the answers for this monster. A full-on assault would only make my acknowledging that everything is a part of something bigger. This can't go on much longer. It can go on forever. I cannot die telling this story to myself in the dark. Come celebrate with me that everyday something that has been trying to kill me and is failing. I can't be anything but hopeful doing this work. I'm not only going to topple you, but I am going to bite you. Then moves to the tail. Everyone knows that to outrun Godzilla, you sprint zigzag. But to catch him, I will have to sneak up from behind, eyes without expression, droning on my monotone song, kneel on its back like a supplicant, brace myself against its hind end. I desire only your undesired, nuisance of a painful itch, my signature to follow. Forget everything, blot out that memory of an unshaved ankle rubbing the calf under a body-warmed sheet. There's only the sweet, tangy bite of what I've been missing. Something savory about rancor I haven't had in a long time. I will let the sharp tip of my straw-like mouth strike your skin to draw blood, dive beneath that detestation smell. I'm going to infect you. Wallow there, a solitary beast. Finally digest. I kept myself alive. I am now visible. Your roar acknowledges my visibility as you try holding yourself up, but all you can do is sit there in a puddle of water with your head on your knees. Okay, air interrupted. My son practiced somersaults on the lawn. Beneath our feet, yellow stars glimmer, lights the way. The sun still shines, though it glistens just out of reach. For those damn dandelions to unfurl, its hunger is another color. fists give birth to cells, red-spiked, protruding polka dots rose out of them as if they were candles. That surprised us. They illuminate nothing to this invitation. I watch him expel from one strut to the next, cartwheeling ungainly to crump on the earth. His tired ears fell off at the sound of my voice, and we didn't pick them up because our hands were full of 1,000 poems that neither of us knew how to read. Lastly, my mother sporting her afro at Burger King for my birthday. 1976. This is my father's favorite photograph. My mother sitting up like a queen, blushing. She was embarrassed, he says, but he loved her halo of splendor and coaxed her to show off. The photograph is fading, but I can still see the bright sky blue floral pattern all over her blouse. My mother's brown eyes stare meekly up at the camera, freckles sprinkled just under her eyes, dimples formed in the upper part of her cheeks, lending character to her smooth features. She was, after all, pregnant with her fourth, and never as comfortable showing her shapely figure as my father was comfortable talking about Playboy. Her dark ginger hair hedges just over her shoulders, framing a soft chiseled jawline and slender fair neck. She puts her right hand out to hold my left hand, ready to assemble the crown. It lays flat. Sitting in her lap, knees hidden from the table, my father is lifting the camera, telling us to look up. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for, sorry. We're just having some technical issues. All right. So I want to thank everybody for reading tonight, and I am last. I drew number 5, so I will read. I want to set this novel up a little bit. I normally write nonfiction memoir. This is my first attempt at writing a novel, and I'm just so excited. I actually want to talk about it a little bit. The novel has elements of fantasy and magical realism. The setting is rural North Florida, with a protagonist who is 30-year-old Drury Rose, who is eager to leave her small community, called The Hill, to finally attend community college. She has peculiar talents, inherited supernatural abilities. She gets glimpses from the past or present, and she can shapeshift and fly at night. She inherited these abilities from her great-grandmother, who people assumed to be an immigrant from Ireland. But she remains a mysterious character in family lore, overshadowed by her husband, a preacher lawyer who became famous by declaring the original Garden of Eden to be located on the hill. He even opened a tourist site in the 50s that operated a few years until he died. So the story begins with the unexpected disappearance of a young girl, Ray Ann, during a post-Sunday service church potluck. Y'all know people in the South like church potlucks. This sets off a series of events where Drury Rose learns the true nature of her lineage, that her great-grandmother was actually originally from Jerusalem, from an Arab family, a family of Arab women who were known as healers through the Ottoman Empire. There are some things to know. This story takes place in 2016 as the election year rhetoric hums in the background. And I wanted to write about North Florida, where I was raised, because it so rarely appears in literature. And I want to highlight how rural areas have histories that are more diverse and more globally connected than many realize. So to set this up, we're at the church, and this is when people realize that Ray Ann is gone, and they have started to look for her. We walk through the cemetery for any sign of her. I peek behind the larger headstones, hearing the gravel crunch underneath my feet. Please be here, I beg to myself. My eyes go damp. I avoid cemeteries. The glimpses come too furious from the dead underneath. I have to close my mind extra tight, and I'm already compromised by my nocturnal explorations. We gather at the edge of the woods and call for Rayanne. We belt her name in unison, and I see our voices float through the pine trees, a wave of deep purple, and wander down to the stream that flows out to the Chipola River. I know the blackberry bushes hear us, as well as the snakes lurking in the beggar weed at the dirt road's edge. The redbirds and the bluebirds stop. The mama deer grazing in the next field turns our way, and we remain still for 15 seconds to listen for Rayanne's voice, for any movement. Even the breeze holds its breath. I desperately wish we'd discover a giggling Rayanne emerge from the woods, proud of having found a mischievous bone piercing through her sweetness. But we turn to the church where the air conditioner has cooled the sanctuary. Red splotches cover Deborah, her mother's face and chest, and Bryce, her brother, stares at his shoes. Mr. Homecoming Queen, King, the most popular boy in senior class, is rendered powerless. I see worry start to seep into the air, and this time it's the color of pea. The room goes still for a minute while we try to figure out what to do. Did someone take her? Mama says out loud. I move to shush her. That's a horrible thing to say in front of her parents. Well, that's what I was thinking, Deacon Pitts interjects. Y'all know some of those people up the road, the liberals, they're snatching children right up. Who are these people up the road he keeps talking about? I'm related to almost everyone on the hill and up and down the highway, and so is he. Pitts, now's not the time for this, Peter Cap says. He looks weary and worried, just like the rest of us. Oh, good Lord, how would anyone take her? Another church deacon asked. We were all outside and we would have seen her get into someone's car, and we also know Rayanne wouldn't have gone off with anybody. Everyone mutters in agreement, but an hour has gone by and it seems the child is absolutely gone. That awful feeling in my tummy presses against my bowels and makes me feel like I have to vomit. And the smell of my soured, sweaty bra is rafting up from under my sundress, and that doesn't help. Mama pulls me aside to ask me if I've seen anything. No, goodness, Mama, I'm just as baffled as anyone else. She was here one minute, then gone the next. I mean, I saw her go in the direction of the small bathroom behind the sanctuary. Now, how could she vanish from there? I don't want to mention my earlier glimpse regarding Rayanne, and I don't want to connect the dots either. I don't always fully understand the visions, and just because I can see something doesn't mean I know how to correctly interpret. Mama raises an eyebrow. Then maybe you can go into that particular bathroom, close the door, and concentrate. When Mama raises an eyebrow, she ain't playing. It takes a lot for her to request this. There was a time she wished my weirdness away. I mean, Grandma possessed similar talents, but they just passed right by Mama, and I don't know, she's never indicated if she's miffed or relieved that it skipped her generation. But Mama is serious. Jerry Rose, you're in the house of the Lord, and you have unique spiritual gifts, and it's a sin not to engage your God-given abilities during this dire moment of need. That eyebrow still arched. I feel depleted by everything going on around me, but she's right, of course. I mean, the talents I have are mostly problematic, but sometimes they are convenient, sometimes. Okay, I'll do it, but try not to let anybody back there. I need things quiet, I tell her. I'm scared, though. I mean, how am I going to explain if I catch a glimpse? I can't just barrel out into the churchyard and magically solve the situation, even if there's a solution to be had. I know one thing. When a child mysteriously vanishes from a church bathroom, the reason behind it ain't gonna be anything holy. Thank you. Thank you all. That concludes the program. I don't even know if our technology is working now.
If what?